informational episode of PEEPanEIP, an educational video series where they discuss an Ethereum improvement proposal, upcoming upgrades, and the basics of Ethereum blockchain. I'm Pooja Ranjan, and today we are going to discuss Kiln, the Merge Testnet, and Görli shadow forking. To talk on the topic, our guests are testing wizards of Ethereum, Marius and Parithosh. Thank you, Marius and Parithosh, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
And we also have a good on-call attendance. I see some researchers from KTH Royal Institute of Technology. They recently published a research paper on chaos engineering and are looking forward to contribute in merge testing. We are joined by a few members. So guys, if you would like to quickly introduce yourself.
Sure. Marius, you want to go first?
I can go first, yeah. Hey, my name is Marius. I am working at Go Ethereum at the Ethereum Foundation, and I've been focusing lately on merge stuff, and in particularly also merge testing. Yeah, that's me.
Hey, I'm Parithosh. I work in the DevOps team. I'm mainly helping set up test nets and figuring out what tests we need to run before we're feeling ready for the merge and how to get them done.
Thank you for the introduction. I remember in December 2021, Parithosh and Proto joined us to talk about the Kinsuki with the public testnet launch. And from the last consensus layer meeting, it is known that soon we will have another public testnet with Kiln V1 specs. The timing can't be better than this. And I hope with this talk, we will learn about Kiln testnet specs and how to participate. I know people are waiting to follow what you have got to share. So without further ado, let's peep in.
Sounds good. So hey everyone, let's just start with a brief slide on what the merge is to begin with. We have mainnet Ethereum today, and we have mainnet Beacon chain today. The merge is the idea of combining these two individual chains to have an execution and consensus layer so that we have a unified Ethereum going forward. And the consensus in the Ethereum of the future would be proof of stake. Like Pooja just told us, we've had a bunch of devnets so far. So we've gone all the way from Merge Testnet 0 till Merge Testnet 5. The main idea to do these devnets is to go through the transition in a semi-public manner. Each time we change the validator set, use weirder transactions or different clients, or what the ratio of clients are, etc. And as you can see, things are getting a lot more stable, so much so that Merge Testnet 4 sort of happened when the merge happened without us really looking into it. It just sort of spun up the testnet and it went through without any issues. We even were able to trigger some edge cases there, and it finalized and moved on without any problems. We have Merge Testnet 5 that's launched today, so like the 1st of March. We have more clients participating. It's closer to mainnet distribution, and we're having a lot longer proof of work time so that you can deploy a lot more things before the merge actually happens. The idea for Merge Testnet 5 is that we're going to use the same or very similar images, configs, etc. to launch the Kiln testnet. But before we go into Kiln, let's just do a brief recap of how Kintsugi did. So Kinsuki is the testnet we launched in December. This was with the Kintsugi specs that we launched back then. The testnet itself fared really well. We had a transaction fuzzer that Marius had developed that triggered 2-3 edge cases that led to multiple client bugs. I think there wasn't a single client that didn't have something or the other going on. And that was great. That's exactly what we wanted Kintsugi to do, to find edge cases. And that worked out really well for us. We even had a period of non-finality where we were able to stress the validators to get a better idea of what sort of resource requirements are going to be needed if such a thing were to happen on mainnet, etc. Also, Kinsuki allowed all the client teams to merge their merge code base, which till then was in different branches, onto their stable branches or their developer branches, so to say. And this is a good sign. A lot of cleanup happened. They were able to continue testing on Kintsugi, and it's a great step in the right direction. I've just put some brief stats there. We actually had over 1 million transactions, 500,000 blocks, a ton of addresses that were created. So on all metrics, Kintsugi was doing quite well. And that brings us to where we are right now. So as we said, 16 December was when Kintsugi was launched. Kiln should be about the 10th of March. We should have almost all clients participating, and we have the spec versions that are required to join the testnet. And Kiln will be the last public testnet that we will have before we start merging the existing public testnets like Rinkeby, Robston, Görli, Sequoia. Stay tuned in to the all-core dev calls to figure out when those things would happen, as well as what's the status of each of those testnets. But that's where Kiln is really, really important. Watch out on Twitter to join it. This will be the last time that you can test out your infrastructure, test out whatever weird thing you want before we get to actual testnets. That being said, what's the Kiln testnet for? Well, based on what we had in Kintsugi, we did have some new specs with a decent number of changes. So for example, we had a renaming, we changed the one of the API methods. One of the big things that will be added in Kiln is the implementation of JWT-based authentication. So between the engine API as well as the consensus layer, now you're going to have an added layer of authentication. And hopefully, again, if nothing goes wrong, this will be the last testnet. We're also aiming to have a really long proof of work phase so that whoever wants to join can run their miners, can deploy all of their contracts and actually see what happens during the transition as well. In the past testnets, it's been a bit tight, like configs were released and like if they were released at 2 p.m., then the merge happened at 9, 10 p.m. and then people just were dealing with post-merge testnet. Now we want to give you a couple of days to actually play around with the proof of work testnet before it goes through the merge, and then you're going to have a post-merge testnet. We also want to trigger all the bad things that can happen in a testnet. So all sorts of slashing, invalid payloads, non-finality, go through the whole motions once to make sure that the newest version of spec is actually stable and we're happy with it. I'd like Marius continue from here on.
Yeah, sure. So we wanted to talk a bit about what we did and what our ideas are around testing. And one thing that was really nice was this bad block generator. Basically, it's code to create and sign bad blocks. So whenever we get so there's in the new proof of stake mechanism, there's some mechanism on how to get how to know who's the next signer, and when this next signer or when this next block producer gets the message that he should produce a block, he takes some of the transaction that he has locally, puts them in a block, executes the block, signs the block, and then sends the block to all the other participants. And this bad block generator basically takes this fully verified and final block and then modifies it. And we use some randomness to create really interesting blocks. For example, we replace the field for the gas limit. We replace the field for the gas limit with some extraordinary value, and then this block should be rejected by the network. Or we replace a field with a 0 value. Or what triggered the most bugs was replacing a field with another valid value. So for example, you replace the hash of a block with a previous hash. And this, due to some bugs in caching, this actually hit some errors during Kinsuki. During like it only hit errors on old versions because we didn't update the versions in time. But it's really nice to see that this bad block generator actually produced some really interesting blocks. And as I said, yeah, these blocks should be verified and then rejected by every node. Yeah, and another technique that we played around with is shadow forking. So basically, when we fork a testnet, we know, okay, this testnet is going to fork at that point. Everyone has the same software. No one keeps mining the chain. And but what we can do is pretend that all the nodes will stop at a certain point and then continue on the proof of stake chain, and we will just ignore the proof of work chain that works that the public uses. So for example, what we did was we created the Görli, like we shadow forked the Görli chain. Basically, we went and deployed a contract on Görli with all the validators and all the addresses for the validators and everything. And then once the TTD was hit, then our nodes, those nodes that we configured to follow the proof of stake chain after a certain block, after a certain total difficulty, those nodes actually went on and did the merge. So this shadow forking is really nice because it gives us a way to test whether the fork works and the merging mechanism works without disturbing the public testnet. And since some of our nodes are still connected to the other nodes on Görli, we will also still get some of the transactions that are executed on Görli. They might be in a different ordering, and some of them might fail because of that, because the state will differ slightly from what's on Görli. But we can have like real transaction load. And so we plan to also do this with a mainnet. Of course, we cannot just go on mainnet and then deposit, create a different deposit contract and deposit multiple thousands or millions of Ether in it. Because if we do that on Görli, it's fine because Görli ETH is basically abundant. But we cannot do that on mainnet. So there are versions of the deposit contract that work either with ERC20 tokens or that even work without a token. So you can just say, hey, I'm going to send my 32 ETH, but you're not actually sending anything. And this is the validator that I want to add to the chain. And this shadow forking, it's especially useful for testing sync, because on these devnets and testnets that we spin up, we don't have that much state. Basically, we start them, they run for a couple of weeks, they run for a couple of months maybe, but no one like really uses them. But the real testnets and the especially mainnet is used quite a lot. And so the state of the state is all the contracts, all the all the addresses, all the accounts. This state is really big, and because you need to when your node joins the network, you need to synchronize all of the state. And so shadow forking gives us a really good way to benchmark this synchronization, to test the synchronization, and also to test the optimistic sync. So the optimistic sync is a new feature in the consensus layer, because basically they need to synchronize the chain forward up to the newest head without the execution layer being able to verify the blocks. And this is because the execution layer takes a long time to execute all of the blocks. So the consensus layer will just sync to the head, and then tell us, hey, this is the head. Please try to sync to this. So the consensus layer will tell the execution layer, please sync to this. And then we will start syncing up to this point. And if we cannot verify it because some block in between was invalid, for example, then we say, hey, we cannot do this. And then the consensus layer has to find another chain that's actually valid. So, and because Kintsugi or these merge devnets, they don't really have much state. They have like maybe a couple of kilobytes of state, maybe a megabyte. But mainnet has like 50 gigabytes of state roughly. And so this synchronization takes way longer on mainnet. And so there can be a lot more race conditions and bugs there. And so it makes a lot of sense to do the shadow forking. Yes. Yeah, and then we have also some other ideas for testing. We're doing like manual tests. We're doing these test nets, and we also have Hive. Hive is a really cool platform for integration and regression testing. We've been using this in ETH1 or in the execution layer for a couple of years now. We actually developed this platform, and it has different types of tests. We have static test cases. So for example, we have test cases like execute a transaction with a random opcode. The random opcode is new after the merge, and so we can have test cases that verify that this random opcode is implemented correctly. Or we have things like create a contract and then in the same transaction self-destruct the contract. These are the static test cases, and then we have synchronization tests. And these are things like you have one node that is fully synced to some blockchain, and then you start up a second node, and you make sure that this one node can synchronize from the other node via different protocols. So we have different synchronization mechanisms. We have the full sync. We used to have the fast sync. We have the snap sync in Geth now. We used to have the warp sync in Open Ethereum. So we made sure that different clients can synchronize from each other. And we also have synchronization tests post merge. So that's really cool. And it's really nice for execute. So right now we only have we have a big test suite for execution layer clients, around 45 tests. And there's also something for the combination of execution layer and consensus layer client, but this is currently still being developed. And the cool thing is that whenever we do a release or whenever we push to, I'm not sure what the condition actually is. If someone pushes to master something, these tests are run automatically and can prevent regressions. So they are run every couple of days. And you can pretty easily see if a test has failed and why it failed. And another tool that we've been exploring recently is Kurtosis. And this is a company, and they developed a tool for running longer tests and test nets. The idea behind this is you can spin up different Dockerized clients, and they connect to each other, and they run some testnet configuration, and they can be used for one-off tests. They can also be used for regression tests. And one really nice thing is you can do it in your CI. You are able to simulate load. You can have a transaction spammer. You can have block spammers. You can have network spamming. We can simulate periods of non-finalization. So we can say, okay, we are going to split, or we are going to shut off 60% of the network. Or we can say, okay, we are going to cut the network exactly in half. One of the halves can communicate with each other, but they cannot communicate with the other half. And or we can introduce stuff like time drift for like saying, okay, someone manipulated the NTP server, and so one node is lagging behind. How bad is this going to be for the network? Yes.
Just to clarify, those are also the network stuff is still future plans, but we're hoping that we can start testing those sooner rather than later. And also the scheduled CI-based run is awesome, because before we even think about touching mainnet, we're going to have at least a couple hundred private testnets go through the merge. So you can be really, really sure that a combination of clients will be able to do it.
Yes, exactly. That's really cool. The more often we test this transition, the better. I think that's one of the big risks is during this merge transition, and if we can run it as much as possible with different client combinations, then it's really nice. Yeah, so how can you help? I recently started this testing the merge effort, and we had a test program for Kintsugi, and we want to do another public testing program for the Kiln testnet. We have some we collected and brainstormed some example test scenarios in the document that's linked there. These are things like we want to see a new validator join the network. We want to see a validator shutting off their node. We want to see a validator signing bad blocks. We want to see periods of non-finalization, stuff like this, or just easily. So I made 3 different tiers, and there's like the very highly technical tier that would be things like this, and there are less technical tiers for things like running a node, connecting to the network, sending a transaction, running your favorite dApp, deploying your favorite dApp, creating an NFT, things like this. Just interacting with the network. That is something that almost everyone can use, can do, and help us test the chain. And it's very important for us also to invite all of the tooling teams to test their stuff. A lot of Ethereum tooling has been built with the idea of proof of work behind it. And we need to make sure that all of these tools will still behave exactly the same post-merge. And so if you have a DApp, or if you are a service provider like Etherscan, for example, you should definitely test your stuff on Kiln. And because it's very important to have this transition, we are going to run Kiln for a long time in proof of work mode, so that people can already deploy their stuff during proof of work and test that it works on proof of work, and then test it throughout the transition and then in the new proof of stake network. And we also need people to document stuff. So if you tested something, if you ran your node, if you connected to the network, it would be really cool if you could write down what you did, write down how you did it, and then share it on Twitter or wherever, and help us get this thing started.
Also, yes. Just a small shout out in case anyone is still on the fence as to how difficult it is to join the testnets. The folks at ETHStaker, ETHDocker, Ethereum on ARM have all written guides, made predefined images, auto tools. I think the Ethereum on ARM guys even have an AMI on AWS. So it's as easy as launching whatever you call it, launching an instance on AWS, and you suddenly have all the tooling required to join the testnet. So it's super easy to join. So just join. Test out whatever you have to build.
Just join. It's really fun.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
Oh, and also, everyone who ran a validator on Kintsugi got a co-app. Not saying that's going to happen on Kiln, but I mean, if you want a co-app.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And I believe ETHStaker also did at least one video on how to do it, and so it's I think it's pretty nice. I can probably join the network in like 10 to 15 minutes. I think someone less experienced can probably it's at most half an hour if you want to join it, and you will learn a great deal, and it's really nice. Yes, where can you ask for help? We're on Twitter, Parithosh, me, and
Raphael. Yeah.
Raphael, yeah, right. Yeah. So Parithosh is taking care of the infrastructure of like the boot nodes and the nodes, most of the nodes running the consensus, and Raphael is taking care of things like a block explorer, the public RPC, and stuff like this. So it's they're doing really great work, and it's really easy to. So in the end, we'll have a link where you can look at all of this stuff and really quickly and easily send a transaction and join a network and have everything at one point. At the
all the
same
tooling will be up at kiln.themerge.dev. Easy link to everything. You can add the network to MetaMask. There's a public RPC if you don't feel like running your node. There's a short link to where all the configs can be found. Yeah, there's onboarding is great there.
And we should also add a link, or we also are going to add a link to some documentation on how to join it. And if you have any questions, you can also join the ETHStaker Discord under the testnets, the Testing the Merge channel, where there's a lot of discussion going on. And if you have more specific questions, then in the R&D Discord server, we have the testing channel. We have different testing channels. So make sure you are in the merge section, the testing channel, and you can ask your questions there.
Now even the Ethereum cat herders have a testing the merge channel, so you can also ask there.
Yeah, that's really great.
Sorry, we forgot the link, but we'll plug you in.
All right. So yeah, when merge? What do you think, Pari?
Yeah. So far, I think we're on time. Nothing massive has been broken. Nothing insane has been found yet. If it stays that way, I can feel like this is a realistic timeline.
Yeah. So we broke quite a few things, but those are all like really small things. Most of them are bugs that can be fixed in a day or two, and they were expected. I expected way more serious bugs than that, to be honest. At this point in time, so we're at a great point. Someone asking in chat when Kiln is going to be launched next week. Well, next week from now. This recording will go up. I'm not sure, probably this week. So
around like the 10th of March-ish. Yeah.
Yes, around
we can
the
use absolute times.
Yes, that's better. And after Kiln, we are depending on how Kiln goes, we are ready. And also, like, there might be some small spec changes, and depending on what these spec changes are, we might need another round of testnets. But we're also looking into how and when to merge or transition the testnets, the big testnets like Görli and Rinkeby, Robston, Sepolia over to proof of stake. And after these are done, then we can merge the mainnet. And so I don't want to say specific dates, but I think it's looking pretty good for this summer.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask us.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation. And I'm amazed to see that the amount of effort that is being put behind the scene to build a safe network for public use. Kudos to the entire client devs and testing team for this work. And I would also like to mention, apart from the respect for the development-related work, development-related skills, I'm a big fan of Marius and Parithosh's tweeting skill. I mean, if we have to create memes, why not positive hashtag testing the merge?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, wherever we find a funny location to put that hashtag, we usually do.
Yeah, that's also like it created a really nice community of like 3 to 5 people that, like, whenever they tweet something about it, then they put the hashtag, and it's really nice to also look at the hashtag and look at the people that use it. It's
a few of the people really using them have actually reached out to ask for Genesis validators on Kiln. It's actually really nice. It's awesome that people are getting more involved.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think it's actually being reached to like people who are far away from the continuous watching of all these development work. So it's good.
Yeah. So when I first had the idea for this initiative of testing the merge, I created like some tweet and let them all DM me, and I had over 450 DMs of people interested in testing and helping us get the merge faster. And so yeah, some of them didn't really do stuff, but quite a few of them actually ran nodes, sent transactions, interacted with the network, and did their part for testing the merge and making our lives easier. And that's a really great community effort. So thank you for everyone already participating in testing the merge, and looking forward to round 2 in Kiln.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone.
Of course, I can say this for sure, because I mean, I have been actively involved in upgrades and everything, but I actually missed out this hashtag. And one of my interns who actually documented after looking into Marius and Paris HackMD file, he said, ma'am, we want to make it hashtag testing the merge, because that's what the event is all about. That's what the motion is all about. So I'm happy that people are joining in. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
And thanks to Remy Roy for sharing the details to claim PEEPanEIP, and also documenting some of the process to help out join and participate in testing. And last but not least, we cannot thank Ethereum community enough for supporting the developer work. Last week, we shared Reddit post on ETH stakers to collect some questions on the topic, and we have received a decent response. So I have a short list of questions, and there is a good chance that you may have already covered some of them during your talk, but I'm still going to read for the people who are looking forward to have these questions getting answered during this Q&A section. So if that's fine, I can go ahead with that. All right, so my first question is about testnet duration. I know you did mention about the duration, like it can be for some time. The question from a Reddit user, Rapent, is how long will Kiln be run until the first testnet, Görli, gets forked?
Cool. I'm not even sure if we've decided in which order we want to fork the testnets yet. So Görli might not be first. It might be Robston or one of the, whichever testnet we like the least, I guess. Just to put it that way. But I would say we're going to run it up until we have no more breaking changes for Kiln, for the spec. So if we find that the spec is doing great, that none of the client teams have any further requests, or we don't find any edge cases, then even if it runs for a shorter duration, that's enough.
And I suppose there is a follow-up on this. How long before each subsequent test network is forked?
You mean between each testnet?
That's right.
I think from a coordination perspective, it's a bit easier if each all-core dev talks about one testnet forking and merging. Probably that makes most sense. From a capability point, I mean, it's like half a day's work to merge all of them.
So we usually fork every 2 weeks when we do previously when we fork the testnets. But it's a bit different now because we have to make sure that validators are actually being run, and so we have to set up some infrastructure for them, and then there's the question: should we run it? Should the EF run it, or should are there companies interested in running these validators? We have for Görli, we have validators that are not run by the EF but run by different companies, and companies usually like to run validators and like to set up the infrastructure, and then they run it for like half a year or 6 months, 9 months, or something like this, and then they forget about it, and then one day their infrastructure crashes and they just don't bring it back up. So we need to make sure that these testnets that are like bigger testnets like Görli, that they are actually being run by people that really care about it?
Most likely for Görli, we'd probably merge it with Prata, where we have all the different client teams running a bunch of validators. But then we'd probably have to onboard the execution client teams as well, such that they run validators. I don't know, there's like a bunch of open questions that still revolve around like figuring out finer points. But yeah, I think like a 2-week cadence sounds about right.
Yeah, right. I think one of the Redditor representatives said 248. He did mention that the question was like, would it be like previous fortnightly basis? And it sounds like more or less yes.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on, my next question is about specs. I understand the Kiln public testnet is Kiln V1 spec, and V2 is already out there. So a question from Redditor user named Blackout24 is, how likely are spec changes after Kiln V2, or will Kiln essentially be the mainnet spec testnet?
So one of the things that I'd like to point out is the Kiln V1 and V2 just has one breaking change, which is why we also like delayed the testnet by another week so that we could actually launch Kiln just with Kiln V2. That should make it a bit easier at least. And I think unless there's anything big that is found, it's just going to be minor changes. There won't be any breaking changes left. But yeah, I think Marius knows a bit more about that than me.
Yeah. So I think there are 1 or 2 changes that might that are not showstoppers that might make it in or not. But to reiterate, like the difference between Kiln V1 and V2 was a rename. That was the breaking change. We renamed the random field to previous random or pref random, and we also added a method that is used for the consensus client to ask the execution client what their current status is, and and we added optional authentication between the consensus layer client and the execution layer client, and so these changes were really minor.
I guess one of the planned changes would be that the optional authentication becomes mandatory authentication, yes, right? Yes. Yeah, that's the expected change at least.
That's good. So essentially, Kiln will be the mainnet spec, that's what we are hoping to get.
Oh, there's actually one other small point. Marius mentioned that the tool would be able to communicate to ask for the current status. That's this heartbeat functionality. At least for home stakers, that should give you a bit more calmness, because both your execution and consensus layer will talk to each other and make sure that they are set up properly. So if you have some setup or a wrong versioning or whatever, you will see errors in your logs. It's just to make it a bit easier for users to run their nodes.
That's interesting. Thank you. My next question is about tools and infrastructure. I remember the presentation did talk about some of the tools around, and being a cat herder, I'm also aware of some of the initiatives that are being done by the Ethereum Foundation and client teams in terms of making this information more public, such as community meeting and all. I'm trying to understand the community participations in terms of tools that they are bringing us. For example, we talked about Kurtosis. How useful do you think Kurtosis is going to be in increasing engagement and helping out testing the merge? And also on the research part, like we did talk about chaos engineering. So do you think these are going to be more helpful for merge testing?
So one of the nice things about the Kurtosis tool is that it's a Ethereum merge module. It's its own GitHub repo, and you can write tests for it. So if anyone is interested in getting involved, writing tests using that module would be one of the most high impact things that you can do to help us. But besides that, yeah, of course, run it locally. If you guys notice that clients aren't behaving properly, then please do report it. They have a functionality where you can just dump all the logs at once. So you can just upload one file, one zip file to us, and then we have a complete idea of what your state was.
Thank you.
Yeah. Regarding chaos engineering, I think it's a really nice way to get more resilient clients. I don't think it's that important to have chaos engineering in the near term, but it is very nice to have it in the future. To have like just infrastructure to make our jobs easier as client developers, to find issues or or even just mark things that might be a bit wonky or that could be improved, and basically use it as like smoke tests to see if we can improve crash resistance for clients. And I think that's pretty nice.
Well, thank you. I mean, like this seems really interesting that the research and the tools that are also brought up by the community to help out. And I think that concludes all the list that we have received from the Reddit. And I see some questions are already there in the chat. Alita Moore, if you have microphone, would you like to go ahead and share that? I am not sure if she has the microphone right now, but if I can read the question that she has posted in the chat here. If I understand correctly, between testnets, new changes are added. What's the benefit of doing that compared to sticking with the same feature until the launch?
So the benefit is that we don't have to spend 6 months thinking about the specification and then just start implementing it. The specification right now is pretty solid. There's like minor changes. For example, this renaming of random to preferendao is something that could have been done, or we could have just not do it until the merge. But I think it's nice to change it, and we are still able to do these changes. The software is still pretty fluid, and so I think it's better to do it right now than to accumulate tech debt and then do it in a fork after the merge or something. So yeah.
Also,
maybe Pari.
So also the tricky part for having this on mainnet is to make sure that this transition is right. So if having more testnets means that we can have more transitions, that's fine. We just do more testnets.
Yeah, and like we wouldn't do less testing if the changes would be the same. Basically, the changes also force us to do more testing because whenever there's a spec change, we test all the things that we previously tested again, and then we also test the new changes. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think some question related to the testing tool here is we did mention about the infrastructure that are being set up maybe will be running after the merge as well. But I suppose the question would be like how long? The question she asked here is, will the testing tool being built be useful after the merge?
Hey, I'm here. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, so definitely. Hive is, like Marius said, something that the ETH1 execution layer teams have been using for years, and probably will continue using for years. Kurtosis would also be something that would help us build integration tests to make sure that there is no regression in the CI. Also, chaos engineering would be a cool thing to have, some tools working on that over the long term so that we can, if we find something, still fix it post-merge, right? And that's also one of the points, just because the merge is done doesn't mean the testing would stop. We'd still want to test from as many avenues as possible to make sure that we're not messing up mainnet.
Yeah, and I think like the important part after the merge is not the merge transition anymore, but
Exactly.
we will modify. We will either like leave the tools as is and just focus them more on the post-merge part, or we will just modify them in a way that they will already start with a merged test network and then go from there. But these things like splitting the network or shutting down validators or introducing lag or between validators, those are things that that are really useful regardless of whether we're in the merge transition or before the merge or after the merge.
Yeah, and if anyone at some point notices that they can think of a tooling or something that they think would be useful, feel free to reach out. We can talk about how, why, where, when it can be useful. Yeah, just don't feel shy. Just throw ideas, tweet at us, whatever you want.
Yes, and we're also happy to guide teams.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
We do have a lot of on our plate, and we love to do everything on our own. But if you have a team that's currently a bit bored and have some cool idea but need some guidance, then also feel free to reach out to us, and we'll find a great way to get you into this stuff.
So my last question here, I think I think we can just skip it. I was asking whether or not you thought it would be done by March, but I think you said summer. Is it better?
No. Yeah. So I think the graphic that we have is a bit outdated. So we have the
difficulty bomb, I guess.
The difficulty bomb by June, July, and we hope. Right now, the plan is not to delay the difficulty bomb and have the merge by then. But we cannot be sure. If like the most important thing is security, and if we need 3 more months or 6 more months to get this thing out securely, then we rather take this than just do it fast and dirty, and then everything breaks and everyone is unhappy. So we rather take the time than break mainnet.
That's totally understandable. I mean, the effort that is being put here should be in the right direction. We don't want to rush things just to end up breaking it out. So yeah, taking time is a good thing. All right, talking about time, we are very close to the end of the meeting. So if anyone else has any final question for guest speakers today, or else if you guys have any final thoughts for people who are watching out this video, like inspiration, word for inspiration.
Feel free to join us.
Yeah,
we're friendly
really
people.
Need you. We really need you. We really need every one of you. We definitely need everyone who, every company who's doing a dApp on Ethereum. We need you guys to go to Kiln, publish your dApp, make sure everything works, make sure everything works before the merge, make sure everything works after the merge, make sure all these. So that there aren't many changes that you have to take a look at, but it's crazy important that you do. The only one change that is still coming that's not really spec right now is changing the semantics around get block by number. So right now you can specify pending, latest, and earliest for some of the calls. And in the future, you will also be able to specify safe and finalized. So you can query the node for the finalized block, so you know that this block cannot be reorged. And yeah, but the spec for that is not really out yet. So that's one of the changes that's still going to be done. But if your smart contract depends on the difficulty opcode, then you really need to check if it will not work after the merge, because we reuse the opcode that is currently difficulty for the random opcode. And so yeah, you need to be careful with this. And yeah, if you want to just do some good, if you want to be part of this community, if you want to get started in core development, I think testing is the best way to do it. It's pretty easy, and you can get started doing very simple tasks, and you can learn quite a lot about the architecture, about what's going on. And so yeah, join us.
Definitely. And if you're at some hackathon and you're looking for a testnet to deploy something on, use Kiln. Easiest, don't bother with those Görli, Rinkaby, whatever. It's hard to get testnet either. We have a nice faucet. It's almost always up. If that's not enough, hit one of us up. We'll make you whales. No problem at all.
Yes.
If you're a hackathon organizer, reach out. We'll give you a bunch of ether to hand out. We can work out all of that. Also, one other thing, Trent and Tim organize a merge community call, I think once a month or something like that. So if you're part of the infrastructure provider group or tooling or whatever, and you have questions, feel free to join those. If you have concerns, feel free to join those. Yeah, just join, participate.
That's right. That's the goal here. And yes, all these the community meeting are available on Ethereum Cat Herders YouTube. That's organized once a month. And one point that Marius mentioned about using the difficulty opcode. So we had recorded this episode with Mikhail Kalanin for EIP 4399, I believe. And it's like he has tried to explain it in a very good way. And of course, people, if you are using it, stop using it and reach out to developers for any help or support you need. Having said that, I strongly believe sharing information is a key to public engagement, and availability of details help in community participation for this decentralized world. So on behalf of Ethereum Cat Herders, I thank all the guest participants, and especially to Marius and Parithosh for taking out time to talk about Kiln and the Merge Testnets.
Thank you for having.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
My hope with this release of this episode is to see more people getting involved and using more hashtag testing the merge. So that would be nice to have. And on this note, thanks to all our YouTube viewers for watching and sharing your feedback with comments. Check out description for related links along with the guest Twitter to follow. If this helped, help others, hit like and share, increase the reach. Should you have any question, share it with us, leave it on comment, or reach us on ECH Discord. Subscribe to ECH YouTube channel if you haven't done it already. See you next time with another interesting talk. Till then, keep watching, keep sharing your love with Ethereum Cat Herders. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marius. Thank you, Parithosh.
Thank you.